Hotel Mars, episode N, Dr. Space. David Livingston joins me, my colleague and co-host and co-pilot. David, a very good evening to you. Juno, we're off to the planets, a mission of discovery. 5 years, David. Isn't that strikingly coincidental to Star Trek? Good evening, David.
Good evening. How are you tonight, John?
I'm pleased to follow Juno on its mission to Jupiter, and we're very pleased to welcome the Director of Space Science and Engineering Division of Southwest Research Institute, but for our purposes this evening, Principal Investigator of the Juno mission to Jupiter, Scott Bolton. Scott, a very good evening to you. Wonderful Juno, but a mission statement from you, Scott, helps the audience a deal. Juno's outbound now. What is its mission when it reaches Jupiter? Good evening.
Well, Juno launched in August of 2011, and it reaches Jupiter in 2016. Its primary scientific goals are to help us understand how Jupiter formed and how that enables us to understand how the rest of the planets formed in our solar system.
So, as this mission to Juno, we've had flybys of Juno, we've taken pictures of Juno. Is it going in orbit?
Juno will go into orbit at Jupiter. In fact, it's a very unique orbit. It goes into what we call polar orbit, which is over the poles, and its closest approach to Jupiter is very, very close, only 5,000 kilometers above the cloud tops.
David?
Good evening, Scott. Jupiter has a lot of gravity, so first of all, what is the orbital speed to go around Jupiter and not get sucked in, and how long does its life expectancy do that polar orbit around Jupiter?
Well, when we arrive at Jupiter, we'll actually be the fastest-moving human-made object. We're moving at better than 150,000 miles an hour. And so we go into orbit. We're at our closest approach is when our speed is the greatest, because Jupiter's gravity is pulling you in. That's in fact what enables such a great speed. And so it's somewhere near that 150,000 miles an hour. And then each orbit, we get that speed when we're near that what we call perigove, the closest approach to Jupiter. The whole orbit is 11 days long.
This is the mission statement, aspirational, years out. But right now, there are two things to celebrate about the Juno mission already. And the first is a wonderful video. It's on the NASA site. Scott tells me it's easy for you to find, of Juno as it was launched in 2011. It gained speed and launched outbound by whipping around the Earth. And as it flew by Earth and Moon, it sent back, well, what is this, Scott? It's a cameo of the Earth and the Moon dancing together.
Exactly. In fact, it's the first time we've been able to make something like that. It's a movie of the Earth and Moon from pretty far out. We're about 4 days out before we are arriving at the Earth, and so it's a very distant shot, sort of the way you would see the Earth and Moon from very far, asteroid belt or from Mars orbit. If you had a telescope kind of like Galileo had, this is what you'd see. The Earth is a dot, the Moon, and the Moon moving away from the Earth. It's in orbit, of course. And then as in this movie clip, you see the Moon moving around the Earth. And then when it gets pretty far away, we can't actually keep it in the same frame. And so we focus on the Earth, and then you zoom in on the Earth. Sort of as if you were on a ship coming in. That's just what you'd see. The
delightful moment is when the Moon crosses the Earth, because you can see the shadow go across this hazy blue and white ball.
Exactly. And in fact, it's one of the first times, there's been a few other times where we've actually seen the Earth and the Moon together. Galileo flew by the Earth, it saw that. I think the Deep Impact mission was able to see that. But this is a different perspective. This is very far out, and it really puts things into perspective for you, because you see how fragile and small the Earth is and how fragile and small the Moon is, and you see their motion in relationship to each other.
David?
What is the life expectancy of Juno, and does it end by going into the surface of Jupiter through the clouds, or does it go on out into deeper space?
Well, when Juno goes into orbit, we actually never enter into the clouds of Jupiter themselves. We're in orbit, and we study Jupiter for about a year. We have about 30 orbits, each one about 11 days long. And then at the end of the mission, we send the spacecraft into the planet to get rid of the spacecraft, basically, for planetary protection reasons. And what that means is that we don't want Juno to accidentally crash into Europa or one of the other moons of Jupiter, because we still want to go study those. And so we dispose of the spacecraft by having it go into Jupiter, and then Jupiter's great gravity and, of course, its atmosphere burn up the spacecraft and destroy it.
The second exciting episode of Juno already. This is a very accomplished robot outbound for its spectacular orbiting of Jupiter. Is that, as I understand it, Scott, correct me if I get the facts wrong, October of this year, October 9th, I believe, all over the world, ham radio operators sent Morse code to Juno. Why did they do that?
Yeah, that was an incredible experiment that we thought of a way of trying to get the public involved and also really demonstrate that people, humans, and intelligent life could send out a signal that could be seen by a spacecraft coming in from deep space. We send lots of probes out to different planets, and of course one of the things we're doing is searching for life. The question is how easy is it to detect on the Earth? It's not so easy. And so we decided to do an experiment where we enlisted the help of the ham radio operators to send out a signal and see if we could hear it. And so in unison, thousands of ham radio operators all punched in Morse code the word hi. And as Juno approached the Earth, we actually heard that signal.
It reflected, is that what came back? It's 4 dits, 2 dits, that's HI. And it reflected off of Juno, is that why it came back?
No, in fact, what happened is Juno had radio receivers on board.
I see.
We use them to study plasma wave and radio emissions that are natural. So we're studying the magnetosphere, we're studying things that are emitting natural radio signals. We use that same instrument to detect the ham radio operators. And so the ham radio operators sent us a signal. This scientific instrument, which is very, very sensitive, was able to pick up that signal. We recorded it and stored it in Juno's memories, computer memory, and then we transmitted that signal back to Earth.
David?
Can you tell us a little bit about the instrument package that Juno is carrying with it?
So Juno has a very advanced instrument package. It has a gravity experiment that measures the gravity field of Jupiter using the Doppler shift. So we're sending a signal back through the radio of Jupiter, a radio instrument, basically the telecommunications that we have on Juno, sends back a signal to the Earth, and we look at the Doppler shift of that signal, and we're able to see the gentle pulls and tugs that happen because of Jupiter's gravity field. And so from that, we're able to measure the gravity field of Jupiter and exactly map it out. And then we have a magnetometer experiment that measures the magnetic field of Jupiter, another invisible force field like gravity, but is generated deep inside the planet. And so we have sensitive magnetometers on board. We also have infrared camera, a ultraviolet camera. We have a plasma instrument which measures charged particles. We have a high-energy charged particle instrument. We have this plasma wave instrument, and then we have microwave instruments. The microwave radiometers are one of the most important instruments on Juno because they're actually measuring the atmosphere and the composition, and in particular, how much water or oxygen is inside Jupiter. And that measurement, along with the gravity field, really tells us a lot about how Jupiter formed. We also have a visible camera.
Yeah, I was going to mention the fact that the spectacular one you were coming to, the Juno Cam. What do we expect from the Juno Cam?
So the Juno Cam is actually not a scientific instrument. It was put on in order to capture images of the polar regions of Jupiter and see what the poles look like and see very close up at Jupiter. And it was more for public outreach and just our own curiosity. So we don't have a lot of scientific experiments tied to that instrument.
Oh, we get to watch Jupiter, Scott.
Exactly.
I mean, it's Jupiter Cam is going to turn into Jupiter reality show.
That's exactly right. And the beauty of it is we take that data and we immediately send out the raw data out into the web and out into the public, and we let the public go in and create those images. And that's exactly what we did on the Earth. We took the Earth images that Juno Cam made, and we sent them out onto the websites, and people, everyday people just that don't do this for a living, went in and created the images from that raw data and posted them for us.
One more question, David.
When exactly in 2016 does it get to Jupiter?
It arrives on July 4th, 2016, and I swear I didn't plan that.
Yeah, it's just a coincidence, Scott. It comes up all the time, right?
That's right.
Yeah, the NASA, July 4th, don't think anything of it. July 4th, it goes into orbit? Is that what you mean by arrives?
That's right. We arrive at Jupiter, and what happens when we arrive at Jupiter is we have to get trapped by Jupiter's gravity field. And so we have a big engine on board the spacecraft, and we point that engine forward, and we fire it, sort of like reverse thrust of a jet engine when it's landing. A jet that's landing puts in its reverse thrust, and you feel that pull. Well, we face our engine forward, we fire that on July 4th, and then we slow down enough so that Jupiter's gravity can trap us, and then we're in orbit around Jupiter.
Scott Bolton is principal investigator for the Juno spacecraft outbound for Jupiter. He's also director of Space Science and Engineering Division at Southwest Research Institute. Smooth sailing for Jupiter. July 4th, 2016. David Livingston, Dr. Space of the Space Show. David, July 4th, 2016. You busy?
Yeah, I'm going to be paying attention to Juno.
Right, and we'll be waiting for Juno Cam for the Jupiter reality show. I'm John Batchelor, Hotel Mars, episode N.